It's about that time. This is the NHL trade deadline preview. You're listening to 1 Second Left.
He shoots, he scores!
Side is something going now. Crowd loving it. It's a ball, fly ball.
Home run!
2, 1. Let's check out the Eastern Conference. Let's look at the players that can be traded in the Eastern Conference. Do you see any of these teams making major splashes at the deadline?
I think it's going to be a domino effect. I really do. I think if one team makes a jump into the trade pool for a big name, I think the rest are going to have to go. I think it's one of the reasons why we haven't seen a lot of big moves so far, is that everyone's waiting to see if someone else will break the ice. Otherwise, I think these GMs think they match up pretty well currently with the teams in their conference, and would take their chances on just adding some minor players instead of going after the big gun.
All right, so players that look like they could be traded this year at the trade deadline could be Brandon Dubinsky of the New York Rangers. Where do you think he might go?
Tough to say. Again, I think he's looking somewhere like maybe Philly, but I don't know you trade. I don't think if you're the Rangers, you don't trade to your own conference, let alone your own division. So it's tough to say. I don't know where a player like Dubinsky goes. I again, with the Rangers, I kind of like him where he is. A young player like that, I don't know. I think I might want to keep him.
I think if he does get traded, he gets traded to Columbus in a Nash deal. He does have 3 years left at $3.75 million a year. Cap hit of $4.2 million. I think if he does move, he is moving to a team like Columbus for a major piece. Otherwise, I think that the Rangers stand pat. I mean, Glenn Sayer is one to make trades, but I think he stands. I think he stays with the team he has. They've been great all year. Another player that they're looking at trading in Buffalo is Paul Gaustad. Tough, grindy, third-line player, going to be an RFA in the 2012-13 season. Has a cap hit right now of $2.3 million. I think he could move to a contender and help them big time, be that San Jose, Boston, Detroit, Vancouver.
He fits in teams like Boston, Philly, Chicago, Detroit, kind of a veteran team. He's not that old. He's sitting now at 30.
30, yeah.
But I don't necessarily like him with some of those younger contending teams. I definitely think he's one of those grinders that would probably be good on as a third-line center on those teams that have a lot of depth already.
Andre Kostichin is another player from the Montreal Canadiens that looks like he might be traded. Kostichin is also in his final year of his deal. UFA is a left winger, 27 years old, is an okay player. I don't know where he would go. He's more of a second or third line left winger. Their teams would be definitely interested if they want to shore up their forward units, but to give a whole bunch up for him, I don't know if I would do that.
I was going to say I think if I'm any team looking at Kostichin, I am not looking to give up a lot, especially if you're one of those teams. I mean, if you're a run and gun team, I think he's good. But if you're a grinded out team like the Bruins and the Flyers, he's not going to fit that mold, I don't think.
Derek Roy looks like he might be moved this year. He still has 1 year left at $5.5 million. Cap hit of $4 million. 28 years old. He is a number one center. I think he could be moved, absolutely. I think Buffalo looking to change their team up a bit. Derek Roy's been there for a while. He's a great young player, getting into his middle years now, I guess. I think if Winnipeg were to make a move, I think this is where Winnipeg could make a great move. Even if Toronto wanted to make a move, this could be a good player. He's got good speed, good hands, and a good overall eye for the game.
Derek Roy is small. 5'9", they've got him listed at. That would be the biggest drawback, and his history of a few injuries here and there. I think if you want a number one center, I guess he would fit that mold on a smaller team. Some of the faster teams, Toronto, for example, he might fit well in there. But I just look at his size and injury history would be the drawbacks for him. But otherwise, I like him. If you're looking for a centerman, I think right now the guys available that seem to be available he's probably the guy I'd be going after if I was looking for a top-line center.
Luke Schenn is an interesting choice. The Leafs signed him this year to a 4-year contract at an average of 3.6 cap hit, 22 years old, was looked as the future of the Maple Leafs, but after this season it looks like he might be more of a 5'6" defenseman. Could be a difficult contract to move depending on what teams see in his future, but he could absolutely help a team. A young enough guy where he still has time to grow. Ryan, this is your team. Where do you see Luke Schenn going?
Personally, I don't want to see him go. I mean, I'm not a huge Schenn fan, but I think he's having an off year. I think he's better than this. I don't think there's a horrible offensive upside or a good offensive upside to him. He's physical defenseman. He hits a lot. I like that in him, and I think if he was put in a role where he could just be back there hitting, he'd be okay. He might flourish a little bit as opposed to the pressure that's put on him in Toronto to be a bit of everything. And I don't know. I think he'd be a good addition to any one of those teams that just is looking for that depth at the 5-6 spot in the D.
Jaroslav Spacek of the Carolina Hurricanes is another choice. 38 years old, cap hit of $3.83 million UFA at the end of the season. A lot of contending teams looking just for depth defensemen, I think, would be a good option for Spacek to go to. Detroit just picked up Quincy. I'm thinking that other teams in the East that could use him. I mean, I guess Philly could look at him. The Rangers could look at him. I mean, you're not looking at a huge superstar there. You're just looking at a depth defenseman.
Right, and the Devils just picked up Zidlicki tonight. The thing I don't like about Spacek is his age. He's almost 40. And he's playing defense, and his body is going to break down eventually, I would think. And I don't see him being an asset to most teams at all.
James Van Riemsdyk of the Philadelphia Flyers is also an interesting decision. Second overall pick not so long ago. He has 4 years remaining on his contract at a cap hit of $4.3 million. Now, he's never had a lot of average ice time when he plays. He's always around 13 or 14 minutes, but he does have a productive stats during those times. Is Van Riemsdyk a guy that is going to be moved at the deadline?
I think so. I think I like him in Chicago. To be honest with you, I really do like him in Chicago. I think he's. They need some left wing help. And I think he fits that team. If they can afford him, which is the problem, I would be looking at Van Riemsdyk in a team like Chicago for sure. He's young, and he might need a few young, good players around him to set him up. I like him in Chicago if they can afford him.
For me, I see him, if he is going to move to a team, and I've heard this before, that if Nash goes somewhere other than, like for San Jose, for instance, where they are desperate, if Nash goes to the Rangers, then Van Riemsdyk could be a Sharks target. He's a big guy. The Sharks like big men. He could go there. And it would cost you something, but probably wouldn't cost you as much as Nash would cost you.
Absolutely. San Jose is another good choice for him.
Deadline has always been a busy day. So, do you expect any Eastern Conference teams to make a big splash coming up?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone does. I think it's shown every year that there's a couple of big splashes made, and it's just a matter of whether you deem a big splash as successful or just the volume of trades made, or by the sheer contract of the one big player. You can look at it a few different ways, I think. But I think there's going to be some moves made everywhere. I think everyone can solidify some sort of hole. And it looks like there's enough teams that they're willing to deal. I mean, we've seen a few deals this week already. Tampa, whether they're done or not, has made a few trades this week. Yzerman is rebuilding. He's admitted that. So if somebody could sweeten the pot with him a little more, they might be able to stab somebody out of there. I don't think any of the big guns are going at us in Tampa, but it'd be interesting to see if they're actually done or not.
Does Toronto make a big move to get the center they'd be looking for?
I don't know. I have a tough time reading Brian Burke sometimes because I think he desperately wants one. I think he would have been in the market for a big centerman and made a big move, but I think the goaltending has kind of altered that plan. I think the concern now is do you go a big splash either way, center or goalie, and leave the other position lacking again? Or do you go for an average player, average free agent kind of player at both positions? And then do they work out? So I don't know. A lot of people have been sort of saying the last few days that Toronto goes for a veteran goaltender. Then what? Then what happens next year? If this guy's a rental goaltender, what do you do with him? I'm tired of the old goaltenders that come through here, and then you have to. I mean, we don't have any young goaltenders on the horizon right now. If they were good, they'd be up, I think. I wouldn't be surprised. If it was me, I might be looking and kicking the tires of getting a young goaltender, Bernier, if he's available. What do you see happening? I mean, if you have a lot of this, I mean, you've been on the West Coast, the Western Conference stuff more than me, more than most of our other writers. You asked me the question, what's your predictions, if you have any at all? I mean, obviously you can't be totally...
I think the Leafs don't make a move. I think they could make a move. They would be absolutely in line to make a move, but I think they're in a difficult spot, especially with the new CBA coming. I think it would be interesting if they can find a taker for Luke Schenn. I think they would do it, not because Luke Schenn isn't a good defenseman or whatever, but he has been a healthy scratch this year a lot, and I think the strength of Toronto is their defense. So if they can get someone to take Schenn, that would probably be beneficial to them, and it frees up some money for them as well. I think Buffalo Sabres are going to look to move some money, not because they need to save money, but just to look for their future. I think they have a good team. They just had an off year. I think if they can load some of the contracts so that they can free up some money and feel like they have a good young nucleus coming in, I think that would be good for them. I think Philadelphia's sort of topped out. They made their moves. Pittsburgh definitely looking for Crosby to get healthy. The Rangers, I think, should just stay status quo. If they can get a guy like Nash, more power to them. But you don't want to break up your team. You got one player, especially for a team that's doing so well. Boston doesn't have the cap space, so I think it's a good competitive Eastern Conference this year. But there definitely are top teams, and I think the top teams this year in the East will stay status quo, mostly because they don't have the money to spend, but also because the teams are just that good.
Eastern Conference playoff seedings. Montreal Canadiens.
Looking like Montreal is in sell mode. What do you think?
Definitely sell mode. I like Montreal, not as a team, because I'm a Leafs fan. I hate Montreal. But they need some depth. Forward lines, basically some scoring. Price obviously is great. I think they've set up goaltending for a few years.
I think they need a bit of size up front, but I think they can, if they sell right now, grab some prospects, I think the team could rebound quite quickly.
Carolina Hurricanes.
I think it's also a team that sells. They're a weird team. They have some scoring. Their defense is kind of average, and obviously they have Cam Ward in net. I like their team. I don't love their team. Top 6 help would probably be good for this team.
I don't like this team. I think they're going nowhere. Blow it up. Send Stahl packing.
The New York Islanders.
It's to stay on the course. They're a good young team. Probably get some defense. Their forwards are good. Their goalies are very questionable, but it looks like they could either sign Nabokov or trade him off.
I think they are lacking some serious depth at their top line on the forwards side of things, and I think their defense is lacking as well. I think they need some depth from 3 to 7, and obviously that there's a huge drop off in their point production from that top line.
Tampa Bay Lightning.
This team needs some goaltending and needs defense.
Absolutely, and their left side of the forward lines is really bad. They need some left wing help big time.
Buffalo Sabres.
Spenders in the off season, not so much right now. It looks like it's not paying off. Are they sellers? I think so. Are they looking at Roy Gostad for some prospects, some players for the future? I would say so.
I would think so. I mean, their first line's not too bad, but like you were saying, I mean, a guy like Derek Roy could be on his way out. I begin to wonder too with some of the stuff coming out of Buffalo this year with Miller if he's happy there.
Washington Capitals. Tied for ninth. 61 games played, 30 wins, 26 losses, 5 overtime losses. Last 10 games, 3, 6, and 1.
Don't have a lot of salary cap space to use, about $900,000 to about 7.6. Backstrom's out, so I would suggest they probably need a top tier center if they're going to compete this year. But a lot of the 1 second left writers are saying blow up the team, move Semin fast.
Yeah, this team right now is not going anywhere but reverse. Right now as well, I mean, they only have 2 players over 40 points, and one of them is Backstrom. He's only played in 38 games. So they're not getting any production out of anybody, including Ovechkin. It's just that he's that talented that he's still sitting at over 40 points. So yeah, I don't think there's much going on there. Their right wing side, the right wingers are in big trouble too. They don't have anybody on that side of the ice.
Toronto Maple Leafs. Tied for ninth. Games played 61. Wins 29. Losses 25. Overtime losses 7. Last 10 games 3, 6, and 1.
Leafs have a little bit of cap space to use, 5.9 to 7.3 at the deadline. I think the word around here is that they need a top 6 center. They could use a top defenseman probably, and definitely a goalie. I think.
Same old story with the Leafs the last few years. Down the middle, they're hurting big time. They have a lot of third and fourth line pluggers, not getting a lot of production out of them. Defense, a lot of great defense there, but no one really picking up the offensive side of things. Goaltending at best is suspect. I don't have any faith in Gustafsson or Reimer. And at this point, if Scrivens was doing really well and with the Marlies, they would have brought him up already. I mean, I think there's some projects there. That's about it.
Florida Panthers. 8th overall. Games played 61. Wins 27. Losses 22. Overtime losses 12. Last 10 games 4, 5, and 1.
$25 million to spend at the deadline. My thought is they probably need more top 6 forwards, more top 4 defense. There has been talk of just staying status quo. This is a team that probably wasn't expected to do like this well this year. But if they were to make a move, a Steve Ott might be good here, or a third line grinder, and a quality defenseman might be good for this team.
Right. I think they definitely need some scoring up front. I like their top 4 forwards, but after that, there's some depth issues. I like the scoring they're getting from their top 4 defense, but other than that, after that, it drops off pretty drastically.
Ottawa Senators. Games played 62. Wins 32. Losses 22. Overtime losses 8. Last 10 games 5, 3, and 2.
I think this year is a bonus year for them. They weren't anticipating this, so I would say they just stay status quo.
Yeah, I mean, right now the way I have them, they're just looking to add some depth on the forward line, especially along the right side. Craig Anderson, he's had a great year with his injury here, and we don't know what it's going to do for him. He's still a goalie that I don't trust 100%. I wouldn't mind having a quality backup there, or at least another plan to go to. And I like their defense. Obviously, what Carlson is doing this year is phenomenal. I didn't expect anything like that out of him this year.
Pittsburgh Penguins. Games played 60. Wins 34. Losses 21. Overtime losses 5. Last 10 games 5, 4, and 1.
They have anywhere from 2.8 to 11.5 million, depending on Crosby's long-term injury status. A lot of people here are saying all they really need is a healthy Crosby. This team is built to win if they have their superstars healthy.
Yeah, Crosby is going to be almost, if he comes back, he's going to be almost like a big trade at the deadline, which always helps boost the team's confidence, especially when he's a locker room guy like Crosby is supposed to be. I'm looking at this team; they're pretty solid when they're healthy. Still, it's depth. If they want to go after an Ott or something like that, it would be a good pickup, I think, for them. But do they really need it, and do they need to get rid of the assets to get them? I don't know. I don't think they do, to be honest.
Philadelphia Flyers. Game played 60, wins 33, losses 20, overtime losses 7, last 10 games 3, 6, and 1.
They have no cap room to work with, really. 890,000 K to 1.47 million. They've made their deals. Kabina getting to solidify their defense after Pronger went down earlier this year. They could probably trade Van Riemsdyk for a defenseman if they really needed something. But I think with the acquisition of Kabina, I think they're done.
Well, I don't know that they're going to go very far. That's the only problem with Philly. I have them definitely needing some depth on D. I'm not fond of their D. I mean, I got to watch Kabina all those years in Toronto, and I'm not very fond of Kabina at all. The one thing that stands out for me about Brizgalov is his save percentage. I mean, when I looked at it last year, it was 8.98%. That's pretty low for a top-tier goalie. Could be the defense on that team, though.
The New Jersey Devils. Games played 60, wins 35, losses 21, overtime losses 4, last 10 games 7, 2, and 1. Money to spend, $10.6 million. That's pretty good at the deadline. The thought is that they could use a top defenseman, or Wisniewski could be a pick here from Anaheim, a young goalie, since Brodeur is getting a little older. Ryan Suter could be perfect fit here, but Nashville, I don't think is looking to trade him.
Jersey, I definitely like the idea of a backup goalie there. Brodeur is Brodeur, but he's been banged up a bit. I really like the idea of New Jersey getting some third and fourth line scoring. Their production drops right off when you get to Ponikarovsky. He's after him it's just nothing, and he's not even having a great year at all. So I would see some depth there on the forward lines. Maybe a backup goaltender for sure. D's all right though.
Winnipeg Jets. Games played 63, wins 30, losses 20,
overtime losses 7, last 10 games 6, 3, and 1. $25 million to spend at the deadline. My thought is they need a major upgrade in their top 6 forwards. I've watched a lot of their games this year. There's concern that their management this year is just going to stand pat, see what the attendance like, see what the money's like, and then spend the money in upcoming years. A Derek Roy could fit here. They could stay on course. They do have some young pieces like a Vander Kane and some good defensive pieces. But I think if they were going to make some major moves, I would look at the top 6 forwards.
Absolutely. I think this team needs a lot of scoring, a lot of depth up front. They're a pretty average bunch of players on this team. Kane's having a great year, though. I mean, he's finally sort of coming into what he should have been or what he was looked at as being. Pavelec is having a great year. I think he's putting up pretty good numbers for a team that's average at best, I think. And I guess the only question mark again would be is if he can help them out down the road, or is he for real?
Boston Bruins. Games played 59, wins 36, losses 20, overtime losses 3, last 10 games 4, 5, and 1. They have about $13.2 million to spend at the deadline. They won the Cup last year. They're a solid team again this year. They could probably look to get a nice top 6 forward now that Nathan Horton seems to be out for a while with the concussion. As one of the guys said, they could use a nice doctor to see if they could heal up Horton. But they're a solid team. I think if they could get a top 6 guy, they would do it. But I don't know if they need to.
Yeah, it would be interesting with Horton out and Krejci not having quite the year he had last year. That would be a concern. So you might want to pick up some insurance, but whether or not you want to give up the assets it would take to get a Nash, I don't know. I don't know if they would. Again, their goaltending is fantastic, Rask and Thomas. I just look at them adding some depth players, and maybe they want to go after that big trade acquisition to see if they can go over the top again this year.
The New York Rangers. Games played 59, wins 38, losses 15, overtime losses 6, last 10 games 6, 3, and 1. $6.9 to $8.8 million to spend at the deadline. That they should do nothing. If they're going to do something, they could go for another scoring option. But a lot of people here like this team as is. They're a good young team. There has been talk of Nash going here, but I think giving up the assets for a team that's doing so well, it would be very difficult to do at this point. I think if they can stay status quo, this team looks to be a very strong contender this year.
Yeah, I think this is a good fit for Nash if he's going to go somewhere in the East. I do have a problem though with upsetting the apple cart here in that sense that they have a really young team. They may not want to get rid of any of their assets and just be deep for a while because they have some great young players, especially on the back end, that with some more maturity, within a year or two, they might be one of those teams that can be in the running for the next several years. I like the Rangers. The more and more I look at them on paper and see the way they play, I like them.
All right, thanks for tuning in today. We got Western Conference podcast up as well. Tune into that. Rhino and I will be back next week to talk more sports. We'll also do a recap of the trade deadline, seeing who won and lost in our opinions.
And also, I mean, if you listen to these two breakdowns of the Eastern Western Conference and you think we're way off, definitely drop us a comment or two, please, before the trade deadline. It'd be nice to get as much talk going on the website before the trade deadline, and then also to come back and give us hell or give us praise based on how close we may have been on some of these, because, just like everybody else, we're just full of speculation. We don't know what's going on.
So subscribe to us on iTunes, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. We're on all of those things. Coming up, we're also going to have some MLB previews. We're going to do a lot of different things, guys. So this is not just a hockey program, but we do have the trade deadline coming up, so we want to cover it in depth. So hopefully these two podcasts did that. And is there anything else to say?
Well, yeah, again, along you touched on the MLB, I think we're definitely trying to get together with a bit of a roundtable, hopefully a few of our voices together for a big roundtable on what the MLB season may or may not hold for some teams and some, because there's been a lot of movement in the MLB this year, so look forward to that very soon.
We're not just one sports people, we're multiple sports guys. So thanks for listening to us today, and we'll be back at you next week.